Welcome to the Ohio State Startup and VC Summit. I am Cheryl Turnbull, and I lead the Keenan Center for Entrepreneurship. We set up this center just prior to COVID, so our name is still relatively new, but we have been supporting new ventures from Ohio State-generated research for many years. The establishment of the center allows us to extend this support to startups created by our students and alumni as well. Today, our research startup portfolio consists of over 100 active companies. Approximately 2/3 are associated with healthcare. Of these companies, the portfolio is roughly divided into 25% healthcare IT, 25% medical devices, and 50% life sciences. You will hear presentations today from the CEOs of 5 of our startup companies within the healthcare portfolio. These companies represent a range of technologies as well as a range in their stage of development. Our purpose is to give you a sense of the breadth and depth of Ohio State's startup ecosystem and to encourage you to engage with us in creating and supporting companies that bring our cutting-edge research to the market where it can positively impact patient care, quality of life, and healthcare outcomes. With that as an inspiration, we've asked Dr. Shahid Nimjee to open our summit by sharing his entrepreneurial journey with us. It's hard to introduce Dr. Nimjee without making him sound superhuman. Dr. Nimjee is the founder and chief medical officer of Basking Biosciences, an associate professor at Ohio State, where he leads a research laboratory focused on evaluation of anti-von Willebrand factor aptamers and their antidotes. And in his spare time, he is a top-ranked vascular neurosurgeon at the Ohio State Wexner Medical Center. Dr. Nimjee is a double doctor, holding both a PhD and an MD from Duke University, where he worked with his co-founder of Basking, Dr. Bruce Sullinger. He is also a husband, a father, and one of the nicest, most caring human beings you will ever meet. Thank you, Shahid, for joining us today to share your experience and insights.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for that warm introduction. I'm thrilled to be here and looking forward to our conversation today.
Great. Well, why don't you start off sharing with all of us your discovery and the problem that it solves?
So my work started in this environment with being a very enthusiastic and naive medical student. I think sometimes the best ideas come around when you don't know anything. When I started med school in the late 1990s and was doing my clinical rotations, the biggest problem that I saw around me when I was doing my rotations was that everybody was having significant problems with or dying from issues with thrombosis. They were either dying of heart attacks, strokes, they were getting clots in their legs, arms, and their lungs. And so when I left the wards and started my graduate school program, I said, I want to work on one of the biggest problems that I see, which is thrombosis. That led me to Bruce Sullinger's lab, whose name you noted in your introduction. And in his lab, I worked on RNA biochemistry, specifically looking at how single-stranded RNA molecules can act as drug agents and how they may be the most suitable class of molecules to treat thrombosis. And that's really how my journey began in studying thrombosis and using RNA aptamers to develop drugs that could possibly treat thrombosis. And that started in 2000, and here we are 21 years later, and I'm doing the same thing. So I'm either outmoded or stubborn, but I'd like to think it's probably the latter that got me here.
Persistence is one of the most highly valued qualities in an entrepreneur, so you're certainly exhibiting that. Where does your technology stand today in the commercialization journey, and what are your next steps?
So the commercialization journey is actually, you've asked at a very exciting time. We just started our phase 1 clinical trial last month, and I am proud to say that our first cohort of patients have received drug. So the phase 1 clinical trial is off to the races, and we are hopeful and excited about where we are right now.
That's pretty terrific. It's going to be exciting to have this in the market where it can actually help stroke patients.
Absolutely. Now, we've just started that clinical journey, but just as you said, we are looking forward to getting to the end of it where we can help stroke patients.
Well, maybe if you wouldn't mind reflecting on the partners and the resources that have helped you along the way.
So I'll tell you, scientifically, I really have to give a ton of gratitude for Bruce Sellinger, who is my mentor and partner. And the reason why I mentioned that to start with on the scientific journey, I don't know how often it is that a mentor takes on a mentee and then that relationship evolves to a true partnership. And that's really what's happened between me and Dr. Bruce Sellinger. And that I'm grateful for on the scientific side. With respect to mentorship, I'd really like to highlight, Cheryl, that my journey in a mentorship on the entrepreneurial side began at OSU. And what I mean by that is once we had intellectual property that had value in terms of becoming a patent and had potential licensing, I really got brought along a journey of Entrepreneurship 101 by Mr. Frank Norris, who's in your department. And Frank was very kind. In the beginning of all this, when I was trying to get my lab going, I was taking call, operating. Frank and I met starting every week. And from every week, it went to every other week. And from every other week, it went to every month. And he really checked in with me, really from the time that I started this initiative, right up until that we had licensed the IP to our company called Basking Biosciences. And along the way, as that evolved, more people came into play. And one connection led to two connections, and two connections led to four connections. But it really all began with Frank Norris in terms of the entrepreneurial side and his work in your office.
Thank you very much. Since we have a number of venture capital firms in the audience, can you talk a bit about the role that you see venture firms playing in the advancement of new innovations in health?
Yeah, I think venture firms, and I speak with an N of one, so I don't want to pretend that I have somehow been doing this for 25 years and this is my experience upon looking back. But I'll tell you, as a new entrepreneur, somebody who has the privilege of being able to look at science, figure out where things fit scientifically with a particular disease process, what we lack with respect to those skills are really the partnership to understand business plans as it relates to developing scientific ideas into commercial assets. And what I think that scientific founders and young biotechs can really benefit from is, in addition to obviously the investment of that biotech that understands our scientific foundation for clinical opportunities, really a partnership in understanding how that scientific plan of bringing new treatments to patients can go hand in hand with a investment and financial plan that makes everybody comfortable and allows for a forward trajectory that has as smooth a travel as possible. And I think that's where, again, I'd like to highlight Rev 1. I really had that. And I remember in speaking with Frank, we were talking about our progress we had made as a company to this point. And he is friends with Wayne Embry. And Wayne Embry is one of the leaders at Rev 1. And Frank put me in touch with Wayne Embry, and Wayne and I just had a great conversation. And it was about science. It was about problems with current diseases, how to think about those diseases, what have been the past trials and tribulations with bringing therapies to market. And what I found in Wayne was a kindred spirit who really on a side of commercial development that I know nothing about or knew nothing about, at least back then, I found a kindred spirit who had the same passions and goals that I did. And that really allowed for a blossoming relationship with Rev 1, who led our seed fund for the initiatives that we have with having the drug in phase 1 clinical trials. And those types of relationships, and I was lucky, I hit it from the outset with Wayne and with Rev 1, but those types of relationships really laid the foundation to move forward, and they only grew. We actually have a second fund that's part of our syndicate in our seed round, is a company by the name of Broadview Capital, and they have a mission statement in bringing new cardiovascular and cerebrovascular therapies. That's what their focus is into the marketplace. And with that kind of mission statement, they also bought into what we were trying to achieve as a company in order to improve outcomes for patients who suffer from thrombosis. And in this case right now, it's in stroke, but we hope our long-term plan is to expand that to a number of different diseases that are affected acutely by thrombosis.
Well, thank you. Shah, you've been absolutely terrific. We're so proud that you're associated with Ohio State and grateful that you joined us today.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. And as always, it's wonderful to be with you as well.